Hello fellow space engineers. Today we continue with our Battletest series and we're gonna keep testing empty spaces on ships. This is the assault frigate. It's kind of like a bit damaged, but just cosmetic damage on the other hull. And being an assault frigate, Sokonen has been experimenting with it and decided that the best fit for its intended role are the OKI assault guns, the assault turrets, 122mm guns. They are fast for a large turret of set caliber. They have good traverse speed, good elevation and depression, and they do track very well. The only, let's say, con to that is that the range is 800 meters like the vanilla missiles, but they do fire fast and take out chunks of heavy armor, so ideally this ship fits in the brawling category, so a fast frigate that can close in and deliver a lot of firepower in a concentrated space. Well, for this test we're going to try and tackle the Invader Tainer class cruiser. This is our own modification of the cruiser. To level the playing field with our ships, we replace the vanilla weapons with OKI weapons. Now the layout of the weapons that we use for this cruiser is the same one that you're going to find in the modded version of this same cruiser, because the creator of the Invader mod, Arara, he has two versions of his ships, vanilla and modded. For the modded ones he uses the plasma cannons, but since those are not that accurate, we decided to give us a challenge and use the OKI weapons instead. And in the exact places in which Arara plays a plasma cannon, we place a 122mm gun. And we also kept the missile turret placement, and the Gatling guns were changed with these 22mm guns. We also added extra 50mm quad guns, so it's a worthy opponent. Here we see Sokonen engaging with the CSD autocannon, and already the range 230 turrets are trying to shoot the frigate. And as you can see, the frigate can produce a high volume barrage of 122 shells. Let's see how well they are doing against the enemy turrets. Very resistant frigate. The heavy armor helps a lot. Now remember that the goal here is to disarm the cruiser, destroy its two rockets, and disable the turrets. Talk about dismounting the guns. Here we can see the missile turrets doing what they like, shooting their own ship. Fortunately, ES designs highly turret ships with the Command and Control Information Center, CXC, in the aft section, buried within the hull. silenced. I think it's time to try to run. Uh-oh. Yeah, that was bound to happen. Okay, something happened and the frigate exploded, broke in half. I'm so sorry. It's a loose piece clipped through. You know how collision works now. Just exploded. Yeah, now Sukonin is piloting half the ship. So yeah, that's all for now. Let's do the review of the damage and the whole tactics evaluation. Okay, we're taking a look at the remaining pieces of the Cestus class frigate and the damage on the Taina class cruiser from the Invaders mod. We were talking about ship classification, how to match a smaller ship against a larger one, like how many of those are you gonna need to destroy them, and I'm gonna let Sukonen tell us what he has in mind.
So, if you look over here at what is left of the Cestus, it looks like I failed miserably. And I did fail miserably, but it wasn't because of the ship that I was using, it was because I was flying it poorly. The Cestus is a frigate, which in naval terminology means a smaller vessel that is intended to support either its fellows or larger vessels in a fight. And the Cestus in particular is what we class as an assault frigate, where it's equipped with heavy firepower but relatively short range weapons. So it's meant to be very aggressive and use speed to get in close and slug it out with something. However, since it didn't have any friendly vessels to support, and the enemy cruiser both had longer ranged guns and programming that told it to fly evasively, it sat out of range of my guns and just attacked me while I couldn't hit it back, which is why I lost so badly. This cruiser performs very well when it's able to get up close to something, but the embarrassing truth here is that I was outflown by a robot.
Definitely, yeah, it was kind of like a no contest. So you mentioned that the frigate is a support vessel. Now, I would like to ask you two things. First of all, like this particular design, was it at the point that you wanted it? And second, um, what kind of like combination of vessels would you use, or would you think is necessary to take on a cruiser like that size?
Well, I'm pretty satisfied overall with the Cestus. I think this fight pretty clearly showed that it has some areas for improvement. I need to put at least some weapons on it that have greater range, so it's not completely helpless when it's outside the range of its main 122 millimeter guns. If I were doing this fight again, I would want at least a Corvette with me in order to feel like I had a chance of winning against this thing, because since it could focus all of its attention and firepower on me, it could do a really good job of preventing me from getting close. But if I had another ship, even a small ship like a Corvette, running interference, that could potentially allow me to get in while the invader cruiser is sort of otherwise occupied trying to shoot down or evade the Corvette and then wail on it from close range like this thing is intended to. Obviously, I could do the same with vehicles heavier than a Corvette. That would just make it even easier due to having more armor and firepower on my side. Corvette would be the minimum escort that this thing would need to take the cruiser.
Yeah, I agree. We were talking about it off camera too, in which we're noting how like smaller turrets that are fast firing are really good at taking out other turrets. So the Corvette that would be running interference could be like orbiting around the large cruiser, evading its missiles and its heavy guns that don't have the actual traverse speed to keep up with it, while taking out its turrets, and then the frigate would close in and do the heavy damage on it with its assault guns. Because I did notice something during the fight, is that in the very early stages, during the marriage, the frigate was doing really well. Like the barrage of 122 millimeter shells were actually landing on the cruiser and doing the damage that they're supposed to, but eventually the cruiser caught up and basically with the 230 millimeter guns, the super heavy ones that it has, just basically tore the frigate apart.
Yeah, it was interesting. When I initially got in there, uh, I'm not sure if it was just due to the cruiser's own momentum, but I was able to get into that effective range of the Cestus, and I was starting to tear the ship up. But then it almost was like it learned from its mistake and started flying more evasively and keeping me at range. And at that point, the fight really turned against me. That's when, like Marcelo said, the heavy long range guns started tearing me apart.
Yeah, I have noticed this pattern that the Invader mod has, and they close in. It's kind of like a fighter pilot maneuver. They close in for the marriage, and then you like pass each other. And as soon as that happens, they begin turning, and then it goes like this. Let's say like this whole like space kind of like hardcore sci-fi battle when you see like the two fighters actually orbiting each other, shooting at them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this does. And at that point, when it has all of those guns facing forwards, because that's kind of like the second topic that I want to touch here, and is design. This thing, this light cruiser, because we have to say that it's light, it has all of its firepower. It's capable of facing, doing forwards fire. Even the belly missile turret can fire forwards. The guns that are on the side on the engine nacelles fire forwards. So as soon as they begin doing this whole dance of orbiting each other, you can be within the effective range of the frigate, but this thing is gonna basically tear anything apart. So, and well, regarding that, coming to design, initially when we got into modifying the Cestus, the empty space assault frigate, we noticed that the back side of it it's actually smaller, and that basically prevents like full frontal firepower. And for that, I would like to paste in the undamaged version of the Cestus and also the undamaged version of the Invader cruiser to see like their firing arcs and talk about that. Okay, we're gonna talk about functionality, scale, and looks of the this ship, the Cestus, the ES assault frigate. So earlier we just mentioned the weapons placement and how the aft section is quite small compared to the front section, and how that goes in detriment of the actual performance of the ship. So since Sokonen, you added the guns and you did the experiments. So what do you have to say about it?
Well, this gun that I'm flying over right here is one of the biggest examples of what is off about this ship. If it shoots directly forward, it'll take out the turret in front of it rather than contributing to the ship's firepower. And similarly, these turrets on the sides, in theory, they can fire in a sort of over the shoulder fashion, but in practice, oftentimes the front of the ship will either block their shot, or in the worst case, it'll actually catch their shot. They'll try and fire at something and it'll turn the ship into their shot. It'll take off one of your front turrets or blast off a chunk of armor. This ship also has exposed gyroscopes on the sides and a few non-ideally placed gyroscopes attached inside the front half of the ship. that is my fault, not the original creators. I felt it didn't have enough gyroscopes stock, so I tried to find places to add them. But it seems like the places I did find were not particularly good ones, because some of them are exposed, and some of them, I think, ended up getting detached towards the end of the fight and acting as shrapnel that ripped the entire front half of the ship off.
Yeah, I'm looking at them right now. They are attached to a beacon, and the thing with gyroscopes, and we said this before many times, they are one of the hardest pieces, the hardest blocks in the game, and you can basically you must place them on heavy armor, which is I think the block that is harder than them. So that way they won't get loose. But still, I have placed them on heavy armor, and they still manage to get loose and destroy the ship. I'm looking at another one here, and what I saw sadly happened off camera. I mean, was really cinematic. The cruiser hit you on the bow, and then something got loose, a huge explosion like the ones that you see from collisions, with the black smoke and the debris um, flying around, happened, and the front section got torn off, and that's how only the aft section remained from what you saw earlier in this video. So gyroscope placing, and especially in the way battles happen in Space Engineers, from what we have seen in the Fleet Breakers events, in which ships are basically facing each other. It's kind of like a boxing match. So you have to cover your face and your head. And placing gyroscopes, I'm kind of like reconsidering my designs with the gyroscope placement. Maybe like moving them all into the aft section. Definitely using the technique that you Saukonen use, which is at least placing them on the center line. That way they are protected and not attached to pieces of armor that are on the exterior that are gonna get, peeled off and basically cut the gyroscope loose. So on that regard, speaking about functionality of this design, the the bow section, I think we concur that is an amazing bow section. The way it's, let's say, the steps, the different like terraces that it has for the emplacement for the guns, they work perfectly. But if you compare it to the aft section, it's basically what you just said. They just interfere. And you also mentioned the weakness in the middle. And earlier I said that this reminds me of the vanilla blue ship, which everyone loves to break in half. It's kind of like it's saying cut me in half. And we made this off-camera testing with a torpedo in which we managed to like cut it in half.
And then in this fight, at the very end, the torpedo, not the torpedo, the cruiser managed to blow it in half.
Hmm.
So it seems even the AI has the same idea about weak center sections.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Okay, just for a quick comparison, I'm just gonna fly over here to the embedded cruiser. It's like I mentioned earlier, like every single gun in this thing can fire forwards without any interference. Even the ones on the back are placed side by side so they can fire forwards. I don't like placing guns side by side in any way. You could say that sideways they can shoot at each other, but this thing, the AI that it uses faces it forward. So every single gun without interference is gonna fire forwards. And if you combine that with the firepower that it has, that's what it did to the Cestus. What else? Okay, looks. We talk about functionality. Now it's looks and scale. Uh, I wanna I wanna start with the scale. It's basically the scale that we consider a frigate for space engineers,
A little
size
bit
wise.
high end of that, though.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
almost straddles the line between a large frigate and a small cruiser.
True, true. That's true. I wouldn't even. We're leaving the destroyer classification off in this case because it's not. fully designed to be a destroyer in the way that the firepower that it brings, it's high for its class, but it's not as high as a destroyer. That basically like a group of destroyers can take out easily a capital ship. Maybe even just a pair can take out a capital ship, but definitely not this one. So
Currently, I think it also lacks the reach to be a proper destroyer. Its
yeah,
guns are all relatively short ranged.
yeah, that is true. So definitely a support ship to be used in conjunction with either another frigate or a corvette in like a small squadron, like a small action group.
Or as an escort for a heavier ship.
Yeah, which is the basic idea of the concept of the frigate. It's a convoy escort, picket, and like we were talking about in the with Craig, the whole goalkeeping uh, task, which is intercepting, for in modern navies, intercepting enemy anti-ship missiles. And usually frigates, at least in the U.S. Navy, they are placed as the outer ring of a carrier battle group. So it's like even into this game, you see how that translates when it comes to the size and functionality of said vessels.
A note we glossed over in those torpedo tests Marcelo mentioned, where we split the ship in half, kind of set up ideal circumstances for that to happen. But another test where we were just testing with the ship flying around and trying to shoot down torpedoes coming at it, it actually did a very solid job of redetonating torpedoes before they could
Yeah,
hit.
yeah, and it managed because it's a heavier frigate. It managed to resist the debris of the torpedo, which is usually sometimes even as damaging as the torpedo hit. So it really performed well. Um, the we found out during those tests that the 122 millimeter guns are actually very good at that. So they might even be good against bombers. So something to consider. Okay, let's talk about looks. What do you think?
So, in a vacuum, I would say that the ship looks very good. However, when one considers looks as a partial function of functionality, the ship starts to suffer a bit. It has, because of its shape, relatively minimal internal room, which means less room for key internal systems like gyroscopes. As I said, I was forced to put some on the outside. And it also, in order to create this sort of sweep that it has I think pinched its rear weapon hard points in a little to the point where they cause that issue of potentially hitting your own ship. And it also has the problem that we touched on of the back being shorter vertically than the front, which creates issues where rear turrets either have blocked shots by the front half of the ship or try to fire anyway and risk blowing off chunks of the front half of the ship and its guns. So while it looks pretty, uh, the fact that its looks compromise its functionality in a significant way would cause me to mark it down a bit in the looks department beyond just its good appearance.
Yeah, I agree, and especially if we compare it with the Battlecruiser Mark II, which
Mm-hmm.
is
That's a great
oh,
example of a ship that both looks good and functions well. It looks good. The battle cruiser looked good in a way that didn't cause any of these problems with fields of fire or turrets shooting turrets or glaring weak points in the ship, like the thin middle section of this one.
exactly. It's amazing AAA with the receded mounts, just like these ones, but they do work well in the lines of the Battlecruiser, not as much with these frigates lines. So it's definitely, like you mentioned, pretty, but the design, its beauty, let's say, hinders the functionality, whereas in the Battlecruiser it does not.
It complements it on the battle cruiser.
Yeah, yeah, no, I concur with that last verdict. So what we suggest the author or like anyone who downloads his designs, because he has this way of making things in which basically the player is going to place the turrets where he wants or where she wants. Uh, I would say, and well, it's not my idea actually. You mentioned it. You would enlarge the aft section by 1 or 2 blocks depending on the places, upwards and sideways. And definitely look on the gyroscope placement. That's I don't know, like a suggestion for everybody else out there, especially the fleet breakers crowd, which are like heavy into PvP. Uh, Gyros, hide them.
In Space Engineers, wedges are good. The Star Destroyer was a good ship design.
Yeah,
The reason the wedge is so good is because it allows for maximum forward firepower without turrets getting in each other's fields of fire.